Parents forget or miss every important milestone of mine due to some emergency related to my brother. To make them taste their own medicine, I conveniently forgot to invite them to my wedding. Now they're angry, claiming I'm painting them in a negative light because I told everyone the reason was to avoid disappointment. Hi, 28, female, just got married last weekend, and while it was the happiest day of my life, there's now a huge family drama that's making me question everything. I need to provide some background to explain why I did what I did, because this wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment decision. I grew up as the oldest sister to my brother, Neil, 25, male. From the outside, we probably looked like a normal middle-class family. Mom worked as a nurse, Dad as an accountant, and we lived in a decent house in the suburbs. But that's where the normal ended. From as early as I can remember, Neil was always the priority. Not in the usual younger sibling gets more attention way, but in a way that meant I basically didn't exist unless something went wrong. It started when I was around 7. Neil was diagnosed with asthma, which I understand is scary for parents. It was scary for me too, because I loved my brother, but it became their excuse for everything. My first piano recital after practicing for months, Neil had an asthma attack, so they missed it. At my middle school graduation, where I was giving a speech as class president, Neil had an emergency doctor's appointment that apparently couldn't be rescheduled. My high school debate team won states, and I was the team captain. They were at the ER because Neil had an allergic reaction to something. Now, I'm not heartless. I understand medical emergencies happen, but it was the pattern that hurt. Somehow these emergencies only happened on days when I had something important. When I turned 16, I planned my birthday party 3 months in advance, made sure everyone would come. Even my grandparents were flying in from Florida. On the day of the party, Neil suddenly needed to go to the ER for what turned out to be mild indigestion. My parents not only left my party, but took the car with the cake and decorations in it. I spent my sweet 16 alone with my grandparents while my friends awkwardly left one by one. High school graduation was probably the worst. I was valedictorian and my speech was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 1:30, my parents texted that Neil was having a panic attack about his upcoming finals. He was a freshman then, and they needed to take him to his therapist right away. They missed my entire graduation. When they finally showed up to the celebration dinner at 8 p.m., they spent the whole time talking about how proud they were that Neil managed to handle his anxiety enough to let them come to dinner. There were other moments too, smaller but just as hurtful. My parents forgot to come to the science fair where I won first place, and my teacher ended up taking a picture with me instead. They missed a summer internship presentation I invited them to attend because Neil needed help moving back home from college early. Even when I bought my first car, they didn't congratulate me. Their excuse? They were too busy helping Neil plan his gap year abroad. Anyway, I put myself through college because they needed to save money for Neil's medical expenses. I worked 2 jobs while maintaining a 4 GPA in chemical engineering. They attended exactly 0 of my college events, including my graduation, because Neil always had some crisis or another. The final straw was when I got my master's degree. I graduated with honors, had a job lined up at a prestigious firm, and was giving a speech at the ceremony. They promised they would come. I saved them front row seats. Neil had a migraine that morning, so they stayed home to take care of him. I later saw Instagram posts of him at a party that same night. When I met Jamie, 30, male, my now husband 4 years ago, he was genuinely shocked at how my parents treated me. Jamie comes from a big, close-knit family where everyone supports and celebrates each other equally. Over the years, his family has shown me more love and kindness than I ever got from my own parents. They've never missed an important event in my life, and last year, they even threw me a surprise birthday party. It was such a small thing for them, but it meant the world to me. When Jamie proposed, we had a long, heartfelt discussion about the wedding. I had always dreamed of my wedding being a joyful, stress-free day, but I knew that if I invited my parents, things would go wrong. It's not just a fear I made up, it's been the story of my life. If I invited them, one of 2 things would happen. Either my younger brother Neil would have some sudden emergency that would conveniently make them miss the ceremony, or worse, they'd show up and create drama. After 28 years of being let down and hurt, I just couldn't do it again. Not on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. So I made the decision not to invite them or Neil. I didn't make a big announcement or cause a scene about it when other relatives asked why my parents weren't on the guest list. I was honest. I told them the truth. Based on everything that's happened in the past, I didn't want to risk disappointment on my wedding day. Well, my parents eventually found out about the wedding through social media posts shared by relatives who were there. Now they're blowing up my phone with angry messages. They're accusing me of being cruel and vindictive, and they say I'm painting them in a bad light by telling people why I didn't invite them. They've also accused me of making Neil's medical issues seem fake and claim I'm jealous of the attention he's always needed. On top of everything, my aunt, my mom's sister, told me that my parents are going around telling everyone I've always been an attention-seeking drama queen. They're saying I'm punishing them for being good parents to my sick brother. But despite all the drama, the wedding itself was absolutely beautiful. Jamie's family surrounded me with so much love. My friends were there cheering me on. And for once, I felt like the center of attention on my special day. There were no last-minute emergencies, no scenes, no feelings of being second place. It was everything I'd hoped for. A day full of happiness, support and no stress. Now though, the backlash has started. I've been getting messages from extended family members and not all of them are supportive. Some are calling me heartless for not inviting my parents. A few have even said I should have given them one last chance or that excluding them was just too harsh. I don't regret my decision, not one bit, but I'll admit, I'm exhausted from constantly being painted as the bad guy. Was I really so wrong for handling it the way I did? Should I have invited them knowing full well that they'd either not show up or bring chaos with them? Am I truly being cruel just because I've been honest about why they weren't there? I'm torn between feeling justified and protecting my peace and wondering if I'm being unfair, even though my gut tells me I did the right thing. I wanted one day to be about love and joy, not disappointment or drama. Is that really so terrible? Update 1. First of all, thank you so much to everyone who has shown me support. I've been reading through all your comments and it's been overwhelming in a good way. Many of you have helped me see things from a new perspective. A few people mentioned something called medical abuse by proxy in relation to my brother, and I've started looking into it. It's giving me a lot to think about, and I'm beginning to connect some dots I hadn't considered before. Since I've shared my story, things have taken an even uglier turn. My parents have gone all in with their guilt trips and accusations. It feels like they're determined to paint me as the villain at any cost. Their latest claim? That my brother, Neil, was so devastated by being excluded from my wedding that he had to be hospitalized because of the stress. Here's the thing, though. I know for a fact this isn't true. One of my cousins who still keeps in touch with Neil saw him at a baseball game on the very day my parents claimed he was in the hospital. She said he was laughing, joking, and telling everyone that I was being dramatic as usual. It's honestly exhausting. This pattern is so familiar, it almost feels like a script at this point. Except it's not funny when it's your family spreading lies to tear you down and ruin your reputation. Through all of this, Jamie's family has been my rock. They've shown me nothing but love and support, and I honestly don't know how I'd be handling this without them. My mother-in-law, who truly has a heart of gold, even tried to mediate the situation. She called my mom directly, hoping to help us find some kind of common ground. But that conversation didn't go well. According to my mother-in-law, my mom spent the entire call complaining about how hard it was to raise a jealous daughter like me, someone who, in her words, never understood her brother's needs. My mother-in-law, who's been a pediatric nurse for over 30 years, gently pointed out that a lot of Neil's supposed medical issues don't line up with the way he actually lives his life. She wasn't confrontational about it, just calm and factual. But instead of engaging, my mom hung up the phone mid-conversation. That moment was like a light bulb for me. It hit me that no amount of logic or kindness is going to fix this. My parents aren't interested in having an honest conversation or repairing the relationship. They just want to control the narrative and keep playing the victim. The more I reflect on everything, the more I'm starting to see patterns I completely missed when I was growing up. Looking back, there were so many moments where Neil was perfectly fine until there was an event where I was supposed to be the focus. Almost like clockwork, he'd have some kind of health scare or crisis that shifted all the attention back to him. One of the clearest examples I can think of now is my high school homecoming dance. I had been so excited for that night. I worked part-time after school for months to save up enough money to buy a dress. I even taught myself how to do my own hair and makeup by watching YouTube tutorials. My parents had promised to take photos and drop me off at the venue, and for once I felt like things were going to go right. But then, about an hour before we were supposed to leave, Neil suddenly started complaining about stomach pain. My mom went into full panic mode, insisting it might be appendicitis. She rushed into the ER and my dad stayed behind with me. But he was so distracted by the situation that he didn't even offer to take me to the dance. I ended up sitting at home in my dress waiting for them to come back. When they finally returned hours later, it turned out Neil just had gas. At the time, I brushed it off as bad luck. I told myself it was nobody's fault. But now I can't help but wonder if there was more to it than that. Since the wedding drama, I've also been noticing just how much my parents have worked to control the narrative with extended family. For example, my aunt, my mom's sister, called me not long after the wedding. She was full of judgment, saying I'd humiliated the family by airing private grievances and that I needed to apologize to Neil immediately to fix the damage. I stayed calm and explained my side of the story, including how my parents lied about Neil being hospitalized for stress, when in reality, he was at a baseball game laughing and having a great time. To my surprise, My aunt actually paused for a moment. She sounded taken aback and said, "You know, now that I think about it, your mom has always made everything about Neil. I just thought that's how things were supposed to be." Hearing her say that was bittersweet. On one hand, it validated what I felt all these years, that I wasn't imagining things or overreacting. But on the other hand, it made me realize just how deep this issue runs. If even my extended family saw it but thought it was normal, then this has been a problem for a very long time. My cousin, the one who saw Neil at the baseball game, has been quietly supporting me through all of this. She started opening up about what she's noticed over the years. She admitted that even as kids, she could see how differently my parents treated me compared to Neil. She's been sharing examples, like how my mom would brag endlessly about Neil's achievements that were often small or exaggerated but barely acknowledged mine unless someone else brought them up. One thing she told me really stung. She mentioned a family gathering I couldn't attend where my mom dismissed my promotion at work as no big deal because Neil had just gotten a part-time job. Hearing that broke something in me. It's infuriating to know that this wasn't just in my head. It was real, and other people noticed it too. At the same time, it's also validating to finally have people see and understand what I've been through. It's been a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, even a little relief. But mostly, it's just exhausting to realize how much I've had to carry because of their choices and behavior. Meanwhile, my parents have been ramping up their efforts to discredit me. They're telling extended family members that I'm ungrateful and hateful, that I've always resented Neil for being sick, and that this entire situation is just me lashing out. It's exhausting to hear these accusations, especially because they couldn't be further from the truth. One relative even reached out to tell me I should forgive them because family is all you've got. But here's the thing. I spent 28 years forgiving them. I forgave them every time they missed my milestones. I forgave them for dismissing my feelings, for putting Neil first at every turn, and for making me feel like an afterthought in my own family. Forgiveness, however, doesn't mean allowing the same cycle to repeat over and over again. At some point, you have to draw a line for your own peace of mind. Through all of this, Jamie has been my absolute rock. He keeps reminding me that it's okay to set boundaries, and that prioritizing my own well-being doesn't make me a bad person. His family has also stepped up in ways I never expected. Last weekend, his sister organized a small get-together just to celebrate me and Jamie's wedding. It wasn't fancy or over the top. It was just a cozy, heartfelt gathering with people who genuinely care about us. During the party, my father-in-law gave a toast. He spoke about how proud they are to have me as part of their family, and his words hit me harder than I expected. For the first time, I felt truly seen, appreciated, and valued. It was such a contrast to how I'd been treated by my own parents, and it solidified for me that I made the right choice by not inviting them to the wedding. Despite all the chaos my parents are creating, I'm trying to focus on the positives. For once in my life, I had a milestone that wasn't overshadowed by Neil or derailed by my parents' drama. The wedding was everything I'd hoped for, full of love, laughter, and beautiful memories unmarred by disappointment. I'm also realizing that I'm not alone in this. So many of you shared similar stories in the comments, and it's been both heartbreaking and comforting to see how common these kinds of family dynamics are. It's heartbreaking because no one should have to feel like this about their own family, but comforting because it reminds me that I'm not crazy or overreacting. If nothing else, I hope sharing my story helps someone else feel less alone in their own struggles. As for my parents, I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate this new reality. A part of me feels like cutting ties completely would be the healthiest choice, but another part of me feels guilty for even thinking about it. I spent my entire life trying to earn their love and approval, and it's incredibly hard to let go of that. But the truth is becoming clearer to me now. Their version of love has always been conditional. It's always been tied to how well I fit into the role they've assigned me, the understanding daughter who quietly steps aside to let Neil be the focus. I'm starting to see that I've been chasing something they might not even be capable of giving: unconditional love. Maybe it's time to stop chasing it and focus instead on the people who do love me without strings attached. People like Jamie, his family, my friends, and even a few extended family members who are finally starting to see things for what they are. This whole situation has been an emotional roller coaster, and I won't pretend it hasn't been painful, but I'm determined to come out of it stronger and with a clearer understanding of what I deserve in life. For now, I'm just taking things one day at a time and leaning on the people who've shown me what real love and support looks like. And to everyone who's reached out with advice, shared your own experiences, or just offered kind words, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You have no idea how much it's meant to me during this difficult time. Update 2. Things have taken an unexpected turn and I'm still trying to process everything. My cousin, Kaylee, who was close to Neil growing up, reached out to me privately after my last update. What she told me has completely shifted my perspective on this whole situation. It's not just about me anymore. It's about Neil, our parents, and the dysfunctional patterns they created for both of us. Kaylee and I were never super close, but we always got along at family gatherings. She's one of those people who's easy to talk to and sees things more clearly than most. She told me she'd been following the drama but hadn't wanted to jump in until she had something concrete to share. Apparently, years ago, Neil confided in her that he often faked or exaggerated symptoms because he noticed how much attention it got him. He even admitted to deliberately causing problems on days when I had important events because he was jealous of any attention I might receive. Kaylee said she didn't know how to tell me at the time and wasn't sure if I'd believe her. But after hearing about the wedding fallout, she felt I needed to know. I'll be honest, when I first heard this, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was angry, but it was quickly overtaken by sadness. I'm not even mad at Neil anymore. I'm heartbroken for him. Our parents created this dynamic where he learned that being sick was the only way to get love and attention. It's no wonder he grew up using that as a coping mechanism. Kaylee told me Neil has been trying to break free from this pattern in recent years, but struggles because our parents still enable and encourage it. She thinks he's torn between wanting to be his own person and feeling obligated to play the role they've assigned him. The most shocking part, Kaylee showed me text messages between her and my mom. I could barely believe my eyes as I read them. In one message, my mom told Kaylee that she was worried about how Neil would handle my wedding. She said it might be too stressful for him to see me getting all the attention and suggested he might need extra support that day. The way she framed it made it clear she was planting the seeds for another one of Neil's crises. And what's worse, these messages were sent before they even knew they weren't invited. My mom was literally planning to create a distraction to overshadow my wedding. Seeing that in black and white was like a punch to the gut. After I processed the texts, I decided to share them with some family members who'd been critical of my decision not to invite my parents. These were the same people who told me I was being cruel or overreacting. I was nervous about their reactions, but to my surprise, the tide started to turn. Several relatives apologized for their initial judgment and admitted they had no idea how deep this problem went. One of my uncles even said he'd noticed how my parents treated me differently over the years but had convinced himself it wasn't his place to intervene. Hearing that was validating but also bittersweet, made me wonder how much might have been different if someone had spoken up sooner. Since then, more pieces of the puzzle have started falling into place. Kaylee and I talked about other incidents from our childhoods that didn't make sense back then, but now seemed glaringly obvious, like the time Neil sprained his ankle at a family picnic the day I was supposed to perform a solo in my school choir. My mom insisted on taking him to urgent care, even though he was walking on it just fine, and I missed my performance. All the time, I got a scholarship for a summer program and my parents told me I couldn't go because Neil had a flare-up that required their full attention. Looking back, it's clear these weren't isolated incidents, but part of a long-standing pattern. One of the hardest things to come to terms with is how much my parents have manipulated not just Neil and me, but our entire extended family. They've spent years crafting a narrative where Neil is the fragile, needy one, and I'm the self-sufficient, strong one. Who doesn't need their support? It's like they divided us into roles and never allowed us to step outside of them. Neil got attention, but it came at the cost of his independence and self-worth. I was ignored, but expected to be grateful because it meant I wasn't a burden. Neither of us had a chance to just be ourselves. Since learning all this, I've tried to reach out to Neil, but it's been complicated. He's not responding to my messages, and Kaylee thinks he's feeling a mix of guilt and defensiveness. She's been gently encouraging him to talk to me, but I don't want to push too hard and risk driving him further away. I'm hoping that in time, we can have an honest conversation and start rebuilding our relationship outside of our parents' influence. For now, I'm giving him space and focusing on processing my own feelings. Jamie has been my rock through all of this as always. He's been reminding me that none of this is my fault and that I'm allowed to prioritize my own well-being. His family has also been incredible. My mother-in-law, who's been in the medical field for decades, said the texts from my mom were a form of emotional manipulation and borderline abusive. She's encouraged me to seek therapy to unpack everything, and I think she's right. There's so much to unravel and I know I can't do it alone. In the meantime, I've been setting firmer boundaries with my parents. I've stopped responding to their messages and calls, which has been both liberating and terrifying. They've tried every tactic to get a reaction out of me, from guilt-tripping to outright hostility. My dad even left me a voicemail accusing me of tearing the family apart and saying I'll regret it when they're gone. It's hard not to let those words get under your skin, but I'm reminding myself that this is just another attempt to control me. The support from Jamie's family and some of my extended relatives has been a lifeline. My cousin Kaylee has been amazing too. She shared more about her own struggles with our family dynamic and how she's had to distance herself from certain relatives to protect her mental health. Hearing her story has helped me feel less alone and more confident in my decision to prioritize my own peace. I'm still grappling with a lot of emotions: sadness, anger, grief for the relationship I wish I had with my parents. But I'm also starting to feel a sense of relief. For the first time, I'm seeing things clearly and recognizing I don't have to carry the weight of their dysfunction anymore. It's not my job to fix them or make them happy at the expense of my own well-being. Thank you again to everyone who's reached out with support, advice and kind words. This journey has been incredibly difficult, but knowing I'm not alone has made all the difference. I'll keep you updated as things progress, but for now, I'm focusing on healing and moving forward. Update 3. I wasn't planning on posting another update, but something significant happened that I feel compelled to share. For the first time since the wedding, Neil reached out to me directly. He sent a long, heartfelt email, and honestly, I'm still processing everything he said. It's a mix of emotions, surprise, relief, and a cautious sense of hope. In his email, Neil apologized not just for the wedding drama but for years of manipulating situations to get attention. He admitted he's been in therapy for the past year, trying to untangle himself from the unhealthy patterns our parents established. Reading his words was clear he'd done a lot of self-reflection. He explained that growing up, he noticed early on that being sick was the only time our parents showed real emotional concern. What started as minor exaggerations in childhood evolved into a full-blown pattern of manipulation as he got older. He didn't sugarcoat anything and made it clear he knows this doesn't excuse his behavior, especially towards me. The most surprising part was when he defended my decision not to invite any of them to the wedding. He said if he'd been in my position, he probably would have done the same thing. He acknowledged that our parents created an environment where my milestones were never valued, and said he hopes someday we can build a real sibling relationship without their dysfunction in the middle. He even admitted that when Kaylee showed him the text messages our mom had sent about planning to create a crisis at my wedding, it made him feel sick to his stomach. He said he's starting to realize how much our parents' actions have hurt both of us, albeit in different ways. I'll be honest, I cried reading his email. It's something I've been hoping for years to hear, but I never thought I'd actually get it. Neil's apology felt genuine, and while I know an email doesn't erase the past, it's a step in the right direction. For the first time in a long time, I feel like there's potential for us to have a relationship that isn't clouded by our parents' toxicity. Unfortunately, my parents' reaction to this development has been predictable and disheartening. When they found out about Neil's email to me, they immediately accused me of manipulating him. My mom went so far as to threaten to cut off any financial support they're still giving him if he continues to side with me. It's yet another example of how they've used control and guilt as weapons in our family. Neil told me he's determined not to let their threats sway him, but it's clear this is going to be a long and painful process for him as well. Jamie, as always, has been my rock through all of this. He's been reminding me that I can't control my parents' behavior, only how I choose to respond to it. We're planning to move to Boston next month for his job, and the timing couldn't be more perfect. This feels like an opportunity for a fresh start, both physically and emotionally. The move will put some literal and figurative distance between me and the chaos, and I'm hopeful it will give me the space I need to continue healing. The messages I've received from all of you have been a tremendous source of strength. Many of you shared your own stories of family dysfunction, and it's been comforting to know I'm not alone. This journey has been painful, but it's also been enlightening. I have come to realize that stepping away from toxic situations isn't selfish. It's necessary for survival. For so long, I felt guilty for wanting more from my parents, but now I see that their version of love was never healthy to begin with. To anyone reading this who's in a similar situation, trust your gut. You're not wrong for protecting your peace and happiness even if it means creating distance from people who claim to love you. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is walk away, but it's also the most freeing. Love doesn't have to come with strings attached, and you're allowed to demand more for yourself. As I move forward, I'm focusing on the future. Jamie and I are excited to start this new chapter in Boston, and I'm optimistic about the possibility of having a real relationship with Neil. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm in control of my own narrative. It's a scary but empowering feeling, and I'm grateful for everyone who's helped me get here.